Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Anchor Watch. I am very honored and privileged to bring yet another subject matter expert. I will continue to hammer this and tell you we bring experts, not talking heads, not people that think they have catchy quotes, people who study this stuff. Today we have Mr. Sam Ratner, a man who works for Win Without War. And I'm going to let him explain to you what that organization is. The man's background is he's heavy into data analysis. There's a website, ACLED, which is the quintessential data collection of conflicts around the world and analyzing that I follow religiously. But we're going to talk about a variety of things. But first, I just want to say, Sam, welcome to the show and thanks for coming on.
Bobby, thanks so much. Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
No, our pleasure. So, everybody's focused on the Middle East, but I want to start with a much bigger question. Your background. Well, first, if you can tell us what Win Without War is, we'll go there, and then we'll talk a little bit about the more global landscape. What is Win Without War?
Yeah, Win Without War, we're a national network of progressive activists who work to pursue a more just and peaceful U.S. foreign policy. So we have 300,000 or so members around the country. We do activism at the federal and sometimes at the state levels. And we're really pushing for a foreign policy that actually works for people in this country, and getting away from the forever wars and the real foreign policy failures that have haunted the U.S. and communities in the U.S. over the course of the 20th century, 21st century at least.
Well, and that's where I want to kind of kick this thing off. As you look around the world, literally the global landscape, everybody's talking about Iran, and we'll definitely talk a little bit about that. But just big picture, what conflicts, what situations concern you when you back out of the Middle East and look at everything holistically?
I mean, I think in some ways it's hard to back out of the Middle East, right? In some ways,
it is.
You look at. I keep seeing people, when Trump decided to kick off his Iran war, you started seeing people saying, this is the moment the U.S. is going to be distracted in Iran and the Chinese government is going to invade Taiwan, or we're gonna see hotspots popping off elsewhere. And really, what we've seen actually is that President Trump has created the main global crisis in the world, and that's where sort of energy is really focused. Which is not to say there aren't other things going on elsewhere. But I think that what we've sort of seen instead is that a war of choice, a war that was sort of destined for failure from the start, has created this not just a crisis of the conflict, but an economic crisis, a global economic crisis, with all of the pressure on energy markets that's being created by the blockades of Strait of Hormuz, and now potentially the Red Sea being largely blockaded. This is the big game in town, right? This is we're seeing a moment where the idea that the U.S. is a guarantor of and a supporter of freedom of navigation around the world is coming into question. We're seeing the sort of basis of energy markets be questioned. Where it turns out we're learning a lot about how much oil the Chinese government has been stockpiling and their willingness to keep global energy markets afloat over the course of this time. And I think that for what was sold to the American people, to the extent that it was, as a short conflict, something that will be won within a couple of days. It's clear that it's not going to be won at all, and the effects, I think, are going to be incredibly broad-reaching in terms of sort of the structure of U.S. power and the structure of the international system.
Sorry to interrupt, Sam. The reason I asked the question the way I did was because I want people to understand this is the biggest game. I wanted you to sit there. Okay, I'm looking at the world. This is still the biggest issue. I need people to understand how bad of a situation this has become. And I was pretty sure you're going to say still the Middle East. That being said, here's a logical question everybody keeps asking. Is there a way out of this? Is there a way out of this? With all of the people that you have in your circles, has there been a diplomatic solution that even seems viable at this point?
I think I'll say two things, right? One is, we had one at one point, right? We had, President Obama negotiated a deal that worked for everyone, a deal that, created durable and reliable limits on the Iranian government's nuclear program, that delivered sanctions relief and economic growth for people in Iran, and that built a platform on which a future president, had they wanted to, could have pursued further diplomacy to deal with many of the other areas of contention between the U.S. and the Iranian governments. And that didn't happen. What happened instead is that Donald Trump in his first term tore up that agreement out of spite, effectively. The Biden administration had an opportunity to bring it back, failed to do that. And now here we are in a place where we've seen now, the first Trump administration and then the Biden administration and now the second Trump administration try to tell people that, if we tear up that deal, we can get a better one. No one's gotten a better one. Instead, we've gotten this war and this sort of all the disasters that have flowed from it. So backwards looking, there's so many things that could have gone differently. Forwards looking, I think we saw a few weeks ago a framework for what a deal might look like. Right? We saw, the U.S. and the Iranian government concluded a memorandum of understanding that included, touched on sort of just about the full range of issues of disagreement between the two governments. Some old ones, the Iranian nuclear program, some new ones, control over the Strait of Hormuz, a thing that no one even thought about before Trump started this war. And that deal was pointed to a reality that is sort of, I think, worse for nearly everyone than it was before the start of the war. But fundamentally, play stupid games, win stupid prizes, right? Like you start a war that's doomed to failure, and you're going to generate a situation where you have to accept a peace that's not as good as the one you had before. And I think that but that was a framework in which you could imagine both sides digging themselves out of the hole of continued conflict. And establishing sort of a détente on this new basis and going forward from there. And again, instead of that, we have now a return to war, sort of flying in the face of the law of congressional approval. And as we are talking now, like, who knows where it's going, right? I mean, we're on the edge of potentially a really, really concerning escalation.
And this is, I've been using the term for a few months now, but we have painted ourselves into a diplomatic corner with the military brush. There are no off-ramps here where the United States will be able to claim any type of strategic victory. And what I think this has done more than anything is taught the American people who are paying attention the difference between tactical victory and strategic loss. We can bomb. I mean, we're hitting thousands of targets. We're hitting the same target multiple times in some cases, but yet the ships are not going through the strait. And now with this new development in the Red Sea, and I'm going to talk later about that from a tactical standpoint, where you see Iran now using power outside of its own government, the proxies, coming into play. Interesting enough, we've heard very little from Israel here lately, as far as interjecting with Iran, because the proxies present a problem that, to be completely honest, I don't think the Trump administration really thought about. And when you look at the ammunition expenditure, it is obvious they thought this was going to be a 3-day, 4-day, maybe a week war, and went hard and heavy. My question for you, though, is the United States willing to take a strategic loss because of the economics of this conflict?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I just want to say, first of all, I love the phrase, painted us into a diplomatic corner with the military brush. I think that's a perfect description of this conflict, and I think also a description of so much of what's gone wrong in U.S. foreign policy in the last 25 years. I mean, to your question, I think, will the U.S. accept it? I mean, I think the thing about strategic defeats is that they happen, right? Whether you accept them or not. And I think that's sort of, where we're at. And it's a question, it's a diplomatic question of, will the U.S. government have the skill and frankly, the self-awareness to cut our losses in this situation where, as you point out, right, the military approach here has been singularly ineffective, right? We broke off negotiations to pursue a military approach. That military approach has produced a worse outcome than we had before we started. And not only that, but even if we just sort of zoom into this last few weeks, where most of the exchanges of fire have been about contesting control over passages through the Strait of Hormuz, we haven't won that either. The Iranian military are still hitting shipping targets, including today, and at this point we're at basically zero traffic through the strait. Everyone is suffering as a result of that, and there's no clear military path for how to bring that shipping back. And so so I think the question is, if it's clear that doubling down on the military side isn't going to deliver what we need to have delivered, and I think that should be clear to anyone who's being honest with themselves at this point, then you have to figure out, okay, using diplomatic tools, how can we decide what we need to maintain here, and figure out what we need to give up in order to get that. And it's not a happy place. It's not a place that anyone likes to be. It's certainly not a place that Americans like to be. We like to think of ourselves as the most powerful country in the world that wins all the time. But in this case, it's where we are. And I think we have to sort of look that in the face.
How do you think this is affecting the United States' reputation with allies, the world at large, being able to have diplomatic discussions on anything? Is there a ripple effect from this that you think probably or may affect the United States' ability to negotiate or even interact with other countries?
Yeah, I think it's a huge one, right? And in sort of all like avenues of diplomacy, right? With our friends, this is just part of a long-running series of attacks on the concept that the U.S. might have friends internationally, that Trump has orchestrated, right? To pick a few out of a hat, right? We're still threatening to invade Greenland. We're still, Trump wants to is tariffing Canada, trying to sanction Spain, I guess. Like it's sort of wild stuff. And this conflict has been no different. This conflict has been a situation where Trump has consistently cajoled, threatened, insulted European allies in the hopes of getting them to join his war, which they have, I think, quite wisely avoided doing. And he's also, as we've seen in a lot of reporting, left governments that even he has relatively close relationships with in the Middle East, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the Kuwaitis, et cetera, have been really sort of left out on a branch here because they're not getting coordination from the White House, and it's often their people and their infrastructure that are suffering response. There's suffering strikes from Iranian missiles and drones. So in that sort of sphere, like there's all kinds of damage to relationships. And then in some ways, maybe even more concerningly, right, in a way that's sort of more difficult to account for, dealing, Barack Obama famously liked to say that you don't need to negotiate with your friends, right? Like negotiation is something you do with your enemies. In order to do that, it is actually important for the countries you're negotiating with, the governments you're negotiating with, to believe that you might actually follow through on the what you put forward in those negotiations. And now the Iranian government has engaged with the Trump administration in relatively good faith twice over just in the last year. And both times have resulted in widespread bombing in Iran and no deal. right?
Right.
And I think that advocates in this space have long warned, right? Dating back to the Iran deal, to the JCPOA and the JPOA before that, that realistically, and this is speaking with military experts, and speaking with nuclear energy and nuclear weapons experts, realistically, if the Iranian government decides that it wants to pursue a nuclear weapon, the only way to effectively restrain that pursuit is through diplomacy. That functionally, that's just simply is a functional fact of life. And Donald Trump, I think, has done more damage to that pursuit, the pursuit that he claims this whole thing. When he sort of moves around about what he says this war is about, but some days he says this war is about preventing the Iranian government from attaining a nuclear weapon. And if that's the goal, I think he's done more harm to that pursuit than any president of our lifetimes.
And to be completely honest, it may be beyond our lifetime. This is unprecedented, a war of self-selection. Let me get you out of here on this. A year from now, what does the world look like, and what is the United States stance in it?
Oof,
I love asking this question to people. I love asking this question. It's a hard question. But a year from now, where are we?
Yeah, what a good question. I'm going to choose to be optimistic here. I think okay. I'll say that, we've seen one thing that gives me optimism about this war and about sort of the future for the U.S. in general is that the American people have hated this war from jump, right? There was never a period where people in this country, by and large, said, "Oh, this seems like a good idea. We'll win easily. It's going to be fine." And the opposition to the war has only grown over the course of it. And and as this this sort of aimless conflict continues to deliver high gas prices, high inflation, and to kill people in the region and to kill U.S. service members as it continues to do. I think opposition will only grow more, and I think that we will see the continuation of a real political movement in this country to really change course in a dramatic way. In a year, we'll be on the other side of midterms, and my hope certainly is that Congress will look very different than it looks now, and I think that, we saw in the first Trump administration that in sort of the latter half of that administration, there was sort of a period where the world was mostly, watching the U.S. with a leery eye and saying, maybe if we wait him out, they'll sort of come back to their senses. And I think the eye is going to be way leerier this time. And I think that the distance to be seen as sort of coming back to senses or coming to senses, depending on sort of how you look at some earlier eras of U.S. history, is much farther than it was. But I do think that if that's the direction of travel, and if the movement to reject authoritarian capture in this country and chart a new path forward is actually clearly on the rise, I think that there are going to be a lot of countries that are going to look at that and say, okay, we are willing to hold out in the hopes of engaging with whatever that movement is when it's in power. And that's where I hope we are in a year. And I will hold fire on where I think we might be if that doesn't happen.
Right. And I appreciate your optimistic view. And believe me, I do think it's somewhat optimistic, but I'm hopeful as well. My whole mindset is make diplomacy great again. And I don't know how long it's going to be before that happens. When you look at resources cut, people fired or forced to retire that were subject matter experts. And yet now, because of that, here we are. Sam, I can't thank you enough for joining us this evening. The perspective is always enlightening. Most importantly, the work that you guys are doing is vital. It's vital because these drums of war that keep beating loudly, they have to be countered. And I appreciate what you and your organization and the people that are contributing are doing. So thank you very much for coming.
Bobby, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. So a very interesting perspective, a very good perspective. And we see once again diplomacy being the key. Notice he did not talk about weapons. He did not talk about mobilizing forces. He talked about diplomacy. And we now live in an age where diplomacy has been put to the back burner because military action is considered diplomatic by this current administration. That is what we call ass backwards. Military action is supposed to be the last thing. Now I want to bring the producer extraordinaire, the other Sam, Sam O, Mr. Sammy O himself, Sammy Osterhout.
Bobby.
Sam, we got a lot of stuff to discuss here.
We do.
It's been a very damn interesting week. I don't know. You know what? I'll let you. Where would you like to begin? Because I have so many things and thoughts here.
So I would love to hear your a sort of broader takedown of Hegseth in the hearings today, and just hear a little more about what's. Look, this is damaging.
Yes.
Morale. Like it's damaging the sort of fundamental cultural and social fabric of our military, which is one of its great strengths. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
So Hegseth's performance in front of the Senate Armed Service Committee, if I'm not mistaken, that's who he was in front of, Senator Ossoff, Senator Murray, was absolutely delusional in its delivery. The man was quoted his own words today that he has made since the beginning of this conflict. That's all. And he tried to skate around his own direct quotes. You cannot make this up. Victory has a ton, tons of fathers, but, defeat is an orphan, that phrase. Well, god dang, it's an orphanage because we have so many people who are acting like they have no idea what the heck has happened, etc. Yes, a wannabe bully. That's what he is. And so the bully had to be held accountable today by the United States Congress, specifically the United States Senate. And as he is told facts, as he is shown facts, he is in denial of said facts. The man said that the military of Iran was obliterated. His words, Sam, his words. But yet we have continuously lost American service members, continue to get injured casualties of American service members, and bases have been rendered useless. They are just fancy targets. How is that possible if you have a military that's been, quote, rendered useless or obliterated? It makes no logical sense to me. Everything that's happened in this conflict was predictable. Very predictable. You had a lot of people who were like, be careful kicking this hornet's nest. It's not about military might. It's about all sorts of other things. Why? And this is why diplomacy was the number one weapon if you wanted to shape that space that was available. And what does Trump do? He fires all the diplomats. He gets rid of the military members that have subject matter expertise. He has his golf buddy and his son-in-law take over negotiations as leads. He takes gifts from Middle Eastern countries, and his family is making billions of dollars. As a matter of fact, I would honestly say the only people winning in this war is his personal family, the Trump boys and the deals and the boards that they've been put on, the billions of dollars of money that's going into companies that are supposedly providing solutions. Meanwhile, we're running out of ammunition. We are running out of ammunition.
Can you just kind of go into that for all of us who haven't served, who don't fully grasp the implications of that? What does it mean to run out of ammunition in this case? It's not literally like bullets, right?
Right. So you have two, ammunition nowadays, it basically falls into two major categories, offensive and defensive. So offensively, Tomahawk cruise missiles. Typically, they're fired from U.S. Navy warships. They're highly expensive, but they're highly complex. They can do a lot of things. They can fire and forget over long distances, be guided to certain targets, and depending on the intelligence, which is a big deal, making sure they hit the right targets. They're very expensive. They take a long time to make. Let me be very clear. They take a long time to make. Presidents like using them because it removes humans out of harm's way. It removes the fighter pilot, the strike pilot, from going into, enemy territory, possibly being shot down, which we have seen in this conflict. And so because of that, not wanting to explain to American people that more American lives have been lost, you rely on Tomahawks and other type of guided munitions that can be fired far away. Well, they're more expensive. They're hard to produce. And the part that they don't talk about, the logistics of reloading them into Navy ships, getting these long, huge ass, multiple feet missiles to be put in what they call vertical launch cells, VLS systems. It's a lot. So
wait, so let me stop you there, because I never thought, that just blew my mind.
Yeah,
it's not just that you run out of these, but once you remanufacture them, which takes a long time, you got to get them back into the zone and
you got to get them back in the theater. Yes.
Can you? How does that happen? How do you reload a ship?
Well, that's my thing. So as a weapons officer on board a destroyer, that was my job. So they would bring it out with a different type of ship. And we have these cranes that can literally lift these things and drop them into the cell. So when you look at a DDG, you see these squares on the front and the back of them. That's where they're loaded. It's hard. You have to make sure that the weather's right. This, that, and the other. You got to test them, make sure they're good, load them, and then eventually they'll be shot back up. It's a brilliant system, but there's a logistical piece. And if you remember at the beginning of this, I pounded the table talking about logistics. This is why I was talking about it, because when you shoot all of your ammunition and you are blank, you have to reload at some point. And so you saw strategic ceasefires during this, where the United States military was trying to rearm itself, reload itself, because they were telling Trump, we have to reload. And as we're doing that, we're going through the stockpiles. You can yell at Boeing and Lockheed Martin and all these groups that make these weapons. It's not going to make them faster, at least not right now. And so that's what we're dealing with. And because of that, the offensive weapons we're running out of, but most importantly, the defensive weapons, the interceptors. I've described on this show before how you're trying to hit a bullet with another bullet thousands of feet in the air, going as fast as the speed of sound or faster at this type of point. It's hard. And so you shoot multiple interceptors at one incoming threat. And guess what? The threat only costs $10,000 from Iran's side, but the interceptors cost like $2 million a pop. And you're shooting multiple ones because you're trying to protect have a higher probability of kill. You go through your ammunition very quickly. And that's what's happening. And I believe, without having any inside knowledge or any classified knowledge, that part of the reason the bases are getting hit more is because we're running out of interceptors. And now you have to pick and choose what you're going to defend. You just can't have that same blanket policy because you're trying to conserve ammunition. I'm not the only one that thinks that. There are plenty of military experts like me who have experience that are saying the same thing. And so what does that mean? Your troops are now in harm's way even more because of that. So Hegseth sitting up there, he can sit there and lie all he wants to. He can sit there and try to be the tough guy he wants to. The proof is in the pudding. This is why they're hiding the casualty numbers. This is why they're hiding the battle damage assessment of bases, because it's a heck of a lot worse than they're portraying, because the ammunition is running out and is depleting.
So I mean, that's very clear. And it's like in, any action movie where the guy unloads his clip and then he has to throw the gun, right? Because it's just useless.
Yep.
Right. So look, I remember Gulf War I and the invasion of Iraq, and we used a lot of air power and ballistics and a lot of things to soften the ground for an invasion, right? Like that.
Right.
I mean, I'm oversimplifying.
Yes.
Forgive. But
no, but that was basically it.
but it's we're what do we what how, we seem to be misusing this material.
Right. Well,
Unless he's sending in ground troops. And Patrick has a question. Bob, are we going to attack the Houthis now? I still don't see any indication Trump will put boots on the ground. This is just going to go nowhere. And that's kind of what I'm getting at.
Right. So let's talk about this.
Missiles.
Let's talk about these developments with the Red Sea and the Houthis.
Yes.
Now, Sam, I'm pretty sure you have clips, and we probably should run them now.
Let's check the receipts, shall we?
There were those of us who believed that this was going to happen. We said it within the first 2 weeks of this conflict. The Bab al-Mandeb, or as we call it, the BAM, which is that little narrow exit at the end of the Red Sea, right? It is also one of the world's top 5 most strategic straits, because the amount of oil that goes through there, much like the Persian Gulf, 70% of worldwide trade goes through there up into the Suez Canal and kicks you out into the Mediterranean Sea. The Houthis like, we can shut this down too. And if that happens, where they shut down the Strait of Hormuz and the BAM at the same time, the world, not the Middle East, not the United States, not Europe, the world will be crippled. The world will be crippled, and somebody will be forced to act. And that is where we get into the real Wild Wild West territory. This is where the United States may not have allies, but they'll have more sympathetic ears, and the world is going to hold the United States responsible for this. Meanwhile, Iran.
So I have one more to show, and then let's talk.
States. He's doing this, and he's thinking that the big bad weapons of the United States will freak them out. And they're like, we were here before you, we will be here after you. And the only difference is we are now controlling the Strait of Hormuz, which is on our end. And here's the key thing. The Houthis, who they've been sponsoring for years, are going to shut down the Red Sea. And all oil from the Middle East will stop. And it will bring the world to its knees, and the world will break off from the United States and negotiate directly with Iran. And then the economic fallout of that will happen because people will pivot off the dollar. They'll stop buying U.S. treasuries. And now the quality of life that we enjoy in the United States, which is overwhelmingly cheaper than it should cost us because we're the currency of the world, goes away, and everything becomes super expensive. And we not only go.
Look, man. I was telling y'all before the show came on. You can call me Negro Damas. Rest in peace, Paul Mooney, because it seems like I'm predicting this, but this is not some supernatural ability. This is from someone like me and others who had to study this stuff strategically and have to know it. B, had to execute it tactically and know where the weak points are and where the weaknesses can come from. And most importantly, C, understand that no matter how great your weapons are, no matter how well-trained your people are, if you have leadership that does not understand strategic objectives and outcomes, it does not matter. You will lose. And this is where we are. The Houthis making their announcement on the Red Sea was another trump card that, if played simultaneously, now all of a sudden you have to deal with 2 straits, divide your forces, which is going to be even harder because remember, all of your bases have been bombed out. So logistically, another great challenge. How long can the United States hold out? How long can the world economy hold out? How long can the world sit there and say, we're going to sit by and idly watch this before switching currency preferences, bailing on, like I said, treasuries, bonds, all of these systems and the liberal international order that took place after World War II that the United States set up for the United States before the world abandons it and we never get it back. I think we're almost there. And that will be Trump's legacy. Just like he bankrupted casinos, which are designed for the house to win, he's bankrupting the world order that was designed for the United States to win. It is unbelievable that this is happening.
So yes, and I think that the casino analogy is so apt here because casinos don't lose.
Nope.
You have to really, really work to make a casino lose. And in the same breath, the United States, our military is bigger and more well-sourced than the next something like 9 combined.
Yeah.
This is the biggest military the world has ever seen, but we matched it only by diplomatic power and soft power across the globe. And also, I will say culture, mostly Black culture, if we're being honest, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
We do all of the things that are envious of the entire world, but not now, not anymore.
So to show you how the priorities have shifted because of the leadership, you mentioned 3 major things: the military, diplomacy, soft power, and culture. Okay, let's go and work backwards. Culture, specifically, like you said, Black culture that is generated here and spread around the world. But I'll take it a step further. Immigrant culture from all over the world that became Americanized, from Latinos to Asians, This administration has gone out of its way to neuter that all over the place. I mean, see our previous episodes. And then you move from there to say the military piece. He wants to increase the budget again for the military while slashing every diplomatic arm, every soft power, from USAID to government sponsorship of NGOs that do great work around the world. Just gutted all in the first 2 years of this administration. And this is the results. You're paying for more just to live, just to survive, subsist. You are literally putting your service members, 50,000 of them in this case, in harm's way. And no one's talking about other places around the world. We're still shooting and blowing up boats in the Caribbean and the Pacific without any due process, any justification. We have, terrorist level threats that really have risen all over the world because of these actions. Americans are less safe, less able to afford life, and, are very sour on their future prospects, all in less than 2 years, based on these strategic shifts, all because of the administration. Now, I will say this. Yes, Trump's the head, but the henchmen that he has doing this, the Hegseths, the Millers, the Holmans, these guys are next level too. And understand, this is an ideological fight that you're dealing with. If Trump, God forbid, or whatever, for some people, if he passed away or something like that, you still have to deal with the structure and the apparatus that he has created. And people are still not thinking that through. To undo all of this is going to take years, right? But more importantly, it's going to take decades for the world to trust us again. It's going to take decades.
So I want to kind of go back a little bit to the dearth of weaponry now, and the struggle we're going to have reloading and all that kind of thing. I think it goes back to this. I always think about, like, why the casino, why lose the casino? Why all you had to do was just maintain. And the United States would at least hold some credibility globally, right? And nobody's going to move on us, right? Maybe Russia's going to fuck around because they know Trump is weak and all this kind of thing. Maybe China's going to make some move. China wouldn't do Taiwan. All of this stuff is happening because Trump overplayed. But it all comes back to me. It seems like he likes the spectacle. That's it.
To maintain,
go ahead.
Well, let's be real about this, Sam. To maintain status quo means you're not making a name for yourself.
Yeah,
this is the fundamental policy, domestic and international, of Donald John Trump. The world must recognize me. Period. That's why his face is splattered all over Washington, D.C. on buildings. Any other president, have y'all seen any president out of the 46 that we've had? 45? Yeah, because we had 45 men. We've never seen that before in the nation's capital, right? Especially when they're living. It's rare to see the dead ones, have their pictures all over the place. They have monuments, but to try to build a monument to yourself while you're still alive is just unbelievable. But I'll take it a step further. It's un-American. Yeah. That's what kings do. So we don't. So if you operate from that mindset and look at his foreign policy, and his domestic policy, it makes sense because the objective is not to make America better for the average American. It is for America to recognize that he is in charge, and the America that he provides is the America that you're supposed to want. That is fundamentally different too. But the thing about it is you can do that within your borders and try to get away with it, depending on Congress. You can't do that outside of your borders. And the world is showing them it's not working.
Yeah, I think, a lot of people, I think Maxine, maybe Patrick, perhaps, have talked about ICE in the streets, right? Like this is another military action. This is a military action against Americans, against his own people, and it's all it is spectacle. And look what happened when the spectacle broke loose. I really do believe that folks like Homan and Noam and all those idiots thought that people would see ICE agents busting skulls in the street and cheer it.
Yep.
Like I think they really thought that, and they were surprised at how big of a pushback this is. And I feel like in some weird way, in the twisted, perverted way, they thought we'd all see these bombs drop on Iran.
Yep.
Which is by the way, nobody likes the leadership in Iran. The Iranians don't like the leadership in Iran. They are real bad. Nobody wants them. And yet Americans and the globe is still like, well, Iran, I mean, geez, like the United States kind of sucks. So I feel like is the best option at this moment for Trump to just go away, to just send the ships home and claim. I mean, because it sounded like in a lot of Hegseth's little speech today and Kane's testimony as well, that they were sort of softening the ground, saying, "Oh yeah, we've met our objectives.
Right,
like we did exactly what we said we were going to do."
Yeah,
right.
Which they never said what those really were, and I think and I think we're going to see one extreme or the other. I think everybody's asking what's next. I think either you're going to see everybody pack up and go home, the deployments, this, that, and the other, and they try to publicly spin it as they won, which is what today's testimony was phase 0 of, to try to start that narrative, or they go full crazy and try to put boots on the ground. There's not going to be an in-between here. You know why? Because it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. You cannot continue to have all of this armament flying back and forth in the manner that it's flying. People's lives on both sides, to be honest, but people's lives at stake. Americans coming back to Dover Air Force Base, in a dignified transfer. The American people are not going to tolerate that. Oh, and by the way, you're paying $4, $5, $6, $7, $8 for gas, depending on where you live. Can't do it, right? So something has to give. And this is where we're going to find out if it's Trump or his handlers that are calling the shots. Because we've had various reports that President Trump wants to be done with all this. But they keep ramping up operations. They keep ramping up operations, whether he's talked to Netanyahu or he's talked to Hegseth or whatever, and they keep doing this. The cycle cannot sustain itself. So if they walk away, maybe he puts his foot down and he spends the rest of his term trying to spin it. Or the bloodier, crazier option of putting boots on the ground and really having a never-ending war will be dropped at his feet, and he will be blamed for it historically and in the current present time.
Look, I think we talked about this a lot last week, right? That this is functionally a stalemate. Iran holds the cards. The Houthis are doing their thing. The region is sort of gripped in paralysis. Iran is now, look, I think Iran can continue striking and really baiting our missiles, right? Our interceptors and all of that stuff, saying, shoot this, shoot this, shoot this. You'll be empty soon. And then we hold all the cards. The only thing that can really move the needle for the United States is either a total escalation or,
total capitulation.
Total.
It's one or the other. I think it's interesting. We got clips of Hegseth talking to Congress today.
Yeah.
If we can bring some of those up, because I want people to see what type of reality we're dealing with, vice how they're trying to portray this, right?
Yeah. Yep. And I want to let me run. I'm going to run a couple. I have a Mike Johnson one too. Hold on. Let's watch this.
This battlefield and all the dynamics of it, of which the chairman and I are responsible for ensuring the president understands every branch and sequel of what could happen, and we did.
So
The fact that those contingencies all were part of the possibility, and we understood that, is all the more reason why President Trump deserves the kind of praise he should get for undertaking this effort, having the courage to ensure that crazy Islamists can't have a nuclear weapon to hold us at issue. And he's been willing to stay committed to that regardless of the challenges.
Excuse me. So he should be praised. He should be praised for starting a war without authority, creating a situation in which the world economy is suffering tremendously. We have to have extra money for our farmers, and we have no outcome, at least no realistic outcome in sight yet.
And here's Ossoff. This is the great.
3 weeks later, you declared victory. That was now nearly 4 months ago. 3 weeks after you'd already said Iran's military was destroyed and combat ineffective, you said, quote, Operation Epic Fury was a historic and overwhelming victory. You said Iran's military had been rendered, quote, combat ineffective for years to come. And you stated we had, quote, achieved every single objective. Were those accurate statements?
It certainly was, on behalf of the men and women in uniform, a historic military victory over Iran.
Had Iran's military been rendered, quote, combat ineffective for years to come? That was a statement that you made 4 months ago.
They had 160 naval vessels.
You need to answer the questions,
Navy,
Mr.
and they're gone.
Secretary.
Their Air Force
you
is
said 4 months
completely
ago.
combat
You
ineffective, and
said
they don't
4
have a
months
defense
ago.
industrial base.
Excuse
So
me, Mr.
describe to me a
Secretary.
country that doesn't have an Air Force, a Navy, or a defense industrial base, and
Mr.
I will describe to
Secretary.
you a country that does not have an effective
Mr.
military.
Secretary, you
It can
stated-
lob missiles. Got
Mr.
it.
Secretary, you stated
missiles,
4
but it's
months
not a
ago
combat
that
effective
Iran's
military.
military had been rendered, quote, combat ineffective for years to come. Has Iran's military been, for the last 4 months, combat ineffective?
It's been set back not just years, but likely decades.
You stated
Oh my God. And then one more.
To resolve that in a way so that we don't suffer any more troop losses. This is a great tragedy. It shouldn't happen. But it is a very important objective that I believe we've achieved to ensure that the largest sponsor of state of terrorism does not have a nuclear weapon. That would be a disaster for everybody, and everybody around the world understands that. Now we got to wrap it up. Yes, ma'am. Fourth row.
Now we got to wrap it up.
So, first of all, Senator John Ossoff from the great state of Georgia, my home state, that's how you stay on task, stay on target. Okay, that's number one. He refused to let him gaslight him. The reality of it is, by stating the question the way he did, with everybody knowing we just have more American dead, he looks like a fool that is completely out of touch. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the number one civilian in the Department of Defense who cannot answer a simple question. Senator Reid, Rhode Island. Okay, understand, Georgia and Rhode Island has is where the Naval War College is, where I got my master's. They understand naval warfare up there. Jack Reed does. I know that for a fact. I met the man. Senator Ossoff, met him too. He understands, with the many bases we have in Georgia, how serious this is. They want to get him on record to show the delusional outlook that he has. There's not one commanding officer, not one general or admiral that will sit there and say that a military that is combat ineffective is killing people on your side and think that's a true statement. There's no one that would say that logically, but here we are. They're literally lying to your face. They're lying to Congress, and we're expecting caskets at Dover Air Force Base. This is completely unacceptable. He's incompetent. He can't tell the truth. He needs to be removed. Full stop. And I'm trying not to be super angry about this, but God damn, 19-year-old dead because he egged the president on to start this crap back in freaking February. And now he doesn't even have the testicular fortitude to say, yeah, We miscalculated. Yeah, that's on me, because the military I grew up in, the leader, the commander has to take ultimate responsibility for those actions. And he does not know. That's why he failed as an Army officer. And now he's the damn Department of Defense head. It makes no logical sense to me.
There's no logic involved whatsoever. None. And that's why we're losing. Right? That's
strategically, we are.
Logically, you don't enter a war like this for no reason. In fact, the objectives that they're stating, right? No nuclear Iran. Before this, we had the threat of power, right? The threat of military strikes to lord over them. That was a deterrent.
Yep.
So the value of seeking nuclear weapons at that point over diplomacy, maybe, and probably the Iranians were thinking about it. But guess what they're thinking about right now? They're definitely fucking thinking about getting nuclear weapons because they have nothing else to lose.
And understand something. Historically speaking, there's never been a country that has been taken over once it acquires nuclear weapon capability. Period. Right. That's why North Korea will sit there to the end of days because they have nukes, right? Russia, that's one of the first things they wanted to secure when the Soviet Union broke up. It is the ultimate deterrent. Iran wants it. Their leadership wants it. It enables a dictatorial state to stay in power. And all we have done has we've made them more determined. We haven't touched any of their nuclear material, and we gave them a second deterrent by activating the Strait of Hormuz and freedom of navigation or lack thereof. And now we're talking about the Red Sea as well. Wow. Strategically, I don't know how you can fail more than what we're doing. And to watch Hegseth sit there and be like, oh, no, everything is great. Da, 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 da. Oh, by the way, I need more money. Why? Why would we give you more money? You've proven that you have over $1 trillion budget over the last 2 years, and you need more money because you're trying to bomb your way out of a situation that you caused, and you lack the diplomatic deftness and sense to get out of it.
Patrick says what we really had was a unified world with very harsh economic sanctions. And by the way, those sanctions, this country has been sanctioned for virtually longer than any other on Earth,
on the planet.
And some of the harshest sanctions, obviously you mentioned North Korea, not doing so great either. That was, look, a sanction is meant to be a force of leverage, right? And as Patrick does say, we don't have any of that leverage any longer. It's gone. All of it is gone. And the Obama-Iran deal, look, a lot of us, I know there was skepticism about it, but they did the work, right? They did the hard work. And any negotiation like that is a stepping stone. It's you have to climb that ladder, and you do it one rung at a time. And that was several rungs up already.
Yeah. And that's the thing,
productive engagement.
This microwave diplomacy that they're trying to throw in here, and MOU, blah, blah, where it took Obama's administration years to bake that deal, to not bake it. Pressure on, pressure off, back to the table. Pressure on, pressure off, back to the table. They literally baked the JCPOA. And yet, just like if you microwave a meal by cooking it and baking it the old-fashioned way, the results are what you get. You have a real thing that lasts, that makes you feel full. People seem to be satisfied, versus something that's just full of empty calories, soggy, and tastes crappy after it goes cold. That's what we have right now. You have the JCPOA versus the MOU is basically a home cooked meal versus a microwave TV dinner. Which one would you rather have? That's the only way I can put this, because the chef that we have cooking now doesn't know how to cook. So he has to do the microwave thing. When you have a full diplomatic State Department with subject matter experts and people that have built relationships, you get something that lasts long. That's what's happening. That's the only way I can describe it.
Let me ask you this. I know we're running up on time, but Sandra A just got here, so we got to go on for a little while longer. She had to water her plants. It's Florida. Hey, Sandra. Hey. So I just want to do a little thought experiment.
Yeah.
Let's say somebody like Putin or another adversary was calling the shots in the United States. How would that be any different than what's happening right now?
Well,
You know what I'm
based
saying?
on based on real world data and looking at what's happening in Ukraine, I think the two situations are so similar. It's scary. I've said this before. You're looking at 20th century superpowers getting beat by 21st century innovation. And the one thing that I think Iran and Ukraine, even though they're totally different countries, different political spectrums, different cultures, etc., there is an era of desperation that they are fighting with that cannot be matched by the United States and Russia. When you look at the use of drone technology by both sides, it is fundamentally in the last 18 months, really when Ukraine started this last couple of years, we have seen the face of warfare, the way humans try to inflict, kinetic damage upon one another completely change. And it is allowing David to hit Goliath right between the eyes and say, what now? And that's what's happening. And so for the United States to deal with this, we've had aircraft shot down. People forget that. My concern is when a ship gets hit, when a U.S. Navy warship gets hit, because either positioning, a system fails, because that's the other piece of this too. Everybody talks about the weapons and the ammunition and the firepower of the United States. You are always assuming that those things work as designed operationally. And I can tell you, as someone who's responsible for those systems, had to do the maintenance on those systems, had to do the tests on those systems, they may malfunction. They may not work. They may not execute as designed, and then people die. And the thing about naval warfare that people forget, because our generation has not had to deal with this, the casualty rate is much higher when a ship gets hit as opposed to a plane getting hit, or infantry getting hit, or tanks getting hit, armor getting hit, because of the concentration of people on a ship in a short space. Right. So be very careful here, ladies and gentlemen. If this escalates, and like I told you before, it's either going to escalate or they're going to walk away. There's no in between here. If it escalates and ships start being put in harm's way, like really in harm's way, in confined spaces in the strait and stuff like that, it's going to be ugly. It's going to be very, very ugly.
That, and I would assume that Iran knows the how much that would escalate things so quickly to target an American ship, right? Like it's got to be sort of the last destination for them. The sort of Hail Mary for them.
Well, yes and no. I mean, here's the thing: if Iran deliberately attacks a U.S. warship, it is a declaration of the ultimate escalation, sure. But what more is the United States going to do than what they've already been doing? You're going to go after what? Infrastructure in Iran? Been doing that. Okay. Going to go after missiles again? Been doing that. Only difference is now the United States is like, okay, we're going to put groups, boots on the ground. Okay. We've been waiting for this for 47 years. Do your worst. This is the part that people fail to understand. Iran is not scared of the United States. They never have been. That revolution would have never happened if they were. So
look, here's and so coincidentally, I think that if Iran strikes an American ship, the United States will have a dramatic fall, because I think we'll be triggered into an overdramatic reaction, a wild overreaction with these fools in charge. And I think it'll lead to mass casualties. I think it'll be a terrible, terrible thing.
I agree.
I also want to say it's not for nothing that the election of 1980, the Iranians sat out and pushed. They held on to the hostages until Inauguration Day, right? They had
on purpose.
They fucked with our election really dramatically, and Carter fell. And it's kind of ironic now that they're just waiting us out again, just one more time, see what happens in the midterms.
Yeah, and I do think, by the way, this is going to last easily until the midterms. People are like, oh, no, it's not about wrapping up for the midterm. That timeline means nothing to the current administration, to be honest. Until Congress asserts its authority, elections, Congress, they don't matter. Not to President Trump. He went down there one time and cursed them all out, and the Republicans fell back in line.
Right.
So take that for what it's worth. Take that for what it's worth.
Well, everyone, we are at time. I'm going on vacation next week. I might actually jump back in with you though, because I'm really interested, and maybe we can do it in a couple of weeks too, but I want to talk about drone warfare and get your take on that, because, and particularly AI and drones and all of this business, because it seems like even in the short time since you retired, warfare is changing very, very rapidly.
It's ramped up. I will say this. The one thing I will say about that is taking the man out of the loop, taking the man out of harm's way leads to decisions that I don't think are fully weighed properly, and we're seeing it.
Interesting.
And we can get into it, but there's a reason that you want to have human beings inserted into that decision-making cycle and even that execution cycle, because things are not going to always be what is predicted by AI. We've already seen it. So
I think that's an amazing point that, we all need to think about, is that war is the ultimate last resort. It's because people die. And if you can fully isolate and insulate yourself from any of the destructive and human cost of war, then you're more cavalier taking the lives of others, right?
Exactly.
And that shouldn't be the case.
No, absolutely not.
Jackie Kerr, thank you for watching. She says thank you both. John Miller, thank you. John, I want to pause on that question for a little bit. It says, what about U.S. using a nuclear weapon on Iran? You got a quick answer for that one?
If we do that, Armageddon is here. The world will never forget us, and the United States will never, ever be the same again. I mean, remember, we're the only ones that's used these things in a war. And if they are that desperate, then it all falls apart. I mean, our economic way of life, everything, the world will punish us in a way we have never seen the United States be punished before. That's what I honestly think.
Yeah.
So,
all right.
On that happy note,
more next week. Everyone, thanks for joining. Bobby, awesome. And also, I just wanted to give a shout out to Sam Ratner. That was a great interview, Bobby.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You can follow Sam on Blue Sky, and you can follow Win Without War at Blue Sky here as well. Definitely check them out and support if you can.
Yes, please.
They do amazing work. All right, Bobby.
Yeah.
Thank you. Have a good week.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.
Everyone, don't be a stranger. See you next time.